Hey there. Welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 188, I think. I'm Mike.
I'm Chad.
And the part of our collection that we're going to be talking about today is just a few odds and ends. He just walked in the door 5 minutes ago. We haven't really touched base or pre-planned.
No.
So you didn't bring anything with you, obviously?
No, I'm not currently staying at my place. I'm cat sitting for my sister, so I didn't have access to any of my stuff beforehand.
All right. I've got enough junk over here to talk about. Anyway. Yeah, first thing I thought we'd do is I know you gave a little bit of an introduction when you were on here 4 episodes ago.
Yeah, about that.
All right. So I feel I've talked about this stuff probably over the course of the last 180 episodes.
Okay.
But I thought just so everybody can get to know you better, so I can get to know you better.
Sure.
We'll do a little bit. So when it comes to the different toy properties, like you can glance around this room and see the stuff I'm into. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you have any interest that veer way off of what I'm into or anything.
I don't think... I think we share like a common similarity. So I believe I mentioned last time that I was kind of more of a Marvel kid growing up, and then I don't know, maybe around 1989 when they released the first Batman movie. That's when I quickly switched to Batman. But I was a fan of the 90s animated Spider-Man cartoon, X-Men. Growing up, I was into the Ninja Turtles. I did collect some G.I. Joes, although those were a bit before my time, so I kind of got into it late in the game.
Yeah.
Transformers, I did sell my collection quite a few years ago, maybe a decade.
And that was your collection pretty much vintage toys, or was it?
It was mostly G1 stuff. There was a couple re-releases of G1 models, and since I abandoned my collection, I didn't really save any of my toys from when I was younger. I think my mom passed them off to other kids, or they ended up in the garbage. Sorry, Mom. But no, I've kind of regained an interest in all the property lines that I grew up with. So right now I'm really into the Star Wars Black Series. Yeah. And through our chats, I've kind of restarted collecting certain Marvel Legends figures, getting back into Spider-Man and all that sort of thing. So I did purchase my first Amazing Spider-Man comic about a month ago for the first time in 10 years.
Right, the new issue one?
Yeah.
Right. Did you read it yet? I can't remember.
I did not read it yet. I've got quite a substantial backlog, so I'm back in school right now.
Yeah.
Don't have much time for comic books or any form of leisure activity, so
I really liked it. Yeah, like Amazing Spider-Man's my favorite comic, I guess. I've been collecting it non-stop since I was 8 years old. Mm-hmm. And the last 4 years have been pretty miserable. Like the writer Nick Spencer was on it, and I hated his 3-year run. And it sucks because he worked with some really good artists. But the art's just not enough to save it when the story is not incoherent.
It's not, no.
So then, in the past year, they've been doing this storyline called Beyond, mm-hmm. which it wasn't. I didn't hate it. It was better than the Nick Spencer stuff, but it was almost every book or two was a rotating writer and art team, and so it didn't feel very cohesive either. It kind of felt very disconnected. And the overarching storyline was that Spider-Man's clone was back from the 90s, and he'd kind of stepped in to take Spider-Man's place. But the storyline didn't make a whole lot of sense. So even though I was happy to see the clone back, I was like, meh. But anyway, this new reboot, even though I'm kind of against reboots with number ones over and over again, I think it kind of needed a refresher, and it's John Romita Jr. on mm-hmm. art. And I'm excited about it. So there's only 2 issues out so far, plus they did a free comic book day issue.
Yes.
And I really liked that free comic book day issue. It harkened right back to my earliest days of comic book collecting, some old callbacks to some 80s stuff. And so I won't spoil anything. I don't know if anybody here cares. I don't usually talk about comics very much on this channel, but yeah.
That's a big thing for me, I guess, when I stopped collecting Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man. It was just at issue 700, so the whole Spectacular... Was it Spectacular? Superior Spider-Man was just about to begin. And I had only collected for maybe 50 issues as an adult at that point. So when we went to see the Batman back in theaters, we were chatting about like the whole Spider-Man continuity, and what happened over that time, because we were discussing the new reboot and you know how me as a Spider-Man fan would get back into that series because I've missed so much. I'm kind of excited to jump in at a number one, and the main villain I don't know too much about, so it's a nice spot to kind of learn.
Like Tombstone, is that who?
Tombstone, yeah.
Yeah. So he's kind of, I find he's actually kind of an odd, like I like Tombstone, but he is just a gangster.
Yeah.
And for a big new relaunch, like I know they're kind of banking it, like hanging their hat on their creative team, but it seems like Tombstone's an odd place to start. Like he's the big bad villain of this first arc, which, like really Spider-Man could beat the shit out of Tombstone on most days. Like they're doing a good job of kind of like leaning into Tombstone's advantages and stuff here, but I do like when Spider-Man's more grounded. I don't, when instead of fighting Thanos and doing outer space stuff. So gangsters work for me, and some of his gangsters are still interesting characters like Tombstone, Hammerhead, that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's good. I recommend the new Amazing Spider-Man if you're not reading it yet. But anyway, all that was to say, so now that I kind of know we have the same interests as far as properties, I wanted to do a little rundown through these things and ask you who like your favorites.
Okay.
So DC, I feel like I know the answer to that.
DC is definitely Superman. No, it's Batman. Okay. Of course, yeah.
All right. And do you have any, like, if you had to pick, I don't know if your second is Superman or whatever, but like if you had to pick kind of who's your kind of offbeat favorite?
Offbeat favorites. That's hard. In recent years, I've gone to the Flash quite a bit.
Yeah.
As far as like abnormal DC characters go, I would say Blue Beetle. Like I've got an interest in Blue Beetle. Read a couple of his comics, and I don't know. There's just something about him. Definitely Shazam and even Black Adam now that the movie's coming out. I'm hoping good things for that. But I kind of like the Shazam line too.
I used to always really like Robin. My older brother liked Batman when we were kids, so I liked Robin.
Which Robin?
Let's think. So when I was a little kid, it would have been the original Robin. But I don't like Nightwing, so that's kind of soured my impression of Dick Grayson pretty much for as long as I've been reading comic books. Because around the time I started collecting comic books is when Jason Todd was the second Robin. And I never read the comics with him in it, but nobody really liked him. I read some of the comic books going back, and he was kind of a dick. I kind of like that he exists in the universe now as this kind of dick, but like he wasn't a good Robin. So then I did like Tim Drake, and I actually... That's right. And so I collected Tim Drake's comic book when it first came out. I remember his comics would come out and every issue would have like 5 different covers because there was a different hologram on. You remember that? So I had a whole bunch of Robin comic books. But I eventually kind of like, Tim Drake kind of got a little boring for me too. And I actually got rid of all those old Robin comic books. I do actually quite like Damian. I know you said you think he's kind of...
I can't stand him. I think he's a pretentious... I'm not going to say that word, but... Yeah, I don't like him.
I marked these not for children, so you can call him.
Okay, I think he's a prick, but...
Well, he is, but that's kind of what I like about him. I think he's kind of interesting to read.
Yeah, it draws characters into him.
But the first kind of DC character that, for whatever reason, I said, I'm going to collect this DC book was when Cassandra Cain became Batgirl.
Yeah.
And she had the full black leather mask, and I can't remember how many issues her book ran. I want to say 50 or 60 or so.
I believe so.
But I have that full run of comic books, and I really liked Cassandra Cain, and I was really disappointed when they kind of like, when the new 52 came along and they erased her from existence. Yeah. But then she's come back since, and she's in a teen book now called Batgirls, which I haven't checked out yet, but I might wait for the trade. But yeah, so I kind of like Batgirl. I never would have thought I would have liked Green Lantern before. He was a character I always thought was like dorky. But I follow sometimes creative teams, and Jeff Johns, I'd heard so much buzz about his Green Lantern book, and so by the time probably he was about 20 issues deep, I was like, all right, I'll check out some of the trade paperbacks. And I got hooked on Green Lantern, and I've been collecting it pretty much ever since. And then he got me into Flash and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Jeff Johns.
Jeff Johns is a fantastic, fantastic person, and I think a lot of his stuff has also drawn me deeper into the DC universe.
What about Marvel?
Oh, this is a tough question. Do you want favorite Marvel superhero?
Yeah.
Oh boy. If I had to pick my favorite Marvel superhero, I'm going to say it's a toss-up between Gambit.
Yeah.
And
this isn't like you're not committed to. You can change.
No, I know. I'd say Gambit and Spidey. I don't know. My dad was a Spider-Man fan, so he kind of passed that on to me when I was a kid, which is why I essentially started collecting Spider-Man stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would go with those. I always like Gambit and the X-Men.
Spider-Man's definitely my favorite. But another one that's right up there, and I'm glad that she's finally had an ongoing conflict that's been maintained, is the Black Cat.
Yes.
Who I know she kind of gets looked at as kind of a Catwoman knockoff and stuff, but in my very first comic book I ever bought off the spinner rack was an issue of Spectacular Spider-Man, and Spider-Man was barely in it, but Black Cat was like his kind of girlfriend at the time, and she fought Sabretooth, and this was before Sabretooth was even associated with the X-Men. Like there was no link to Wolverine or anything yet. So I had this issue where Black Cat and Sabretooth are going hand to hand, which nowadays she wouldn't stand a chance against the...
Right.
You know, they've made Sabretooth so big and powerful and everything. But yeah, that was such a cool comic book that I loved the Black Cat from that first issue I ever got with her. And so she's been one of my favorite Marvel characters forever. And so yeah, now she's finally got her own book. And Silver Surfer is probably right behind Spidey. All right. Favorite Ninja Turtle?
Oh boy. So that changed. When I was a kid, it was definitely Leonardo.
Okay.
Natural born leader. But as I got older and kind of got into like the 2000s Turtles, I think it changed to Donatello. Something about him. He's a nerd. I'm a nerd. So I kind of like the science aspect. And even a little bit of Raph. Raph was... I always saw him as a jerk when I was a kid, but now, like, that I'm older, I can understand some of his jaded mentality. And
well, yeah, if you're a Ninja Turtles fan, I don't know anybody that says, "Oh, I love Ninja Turtles," but I fucking hate Donatello. Like nobody. Yeah. You like all of them.
Yeah.
Obviously, but yeah, I was always a Leonardo guy from as a kid into now.
I've got a soft spot for Donnie though.
So why don't we just move on to He-Man?
Sure. Oh, He-Man. Orca.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. I've got this thing for like black mages. I don't know. I was really into...
Is he a black mage?
I mean, he's like a wizard. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be the last thing I would have guessed.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. If we're not going to go Orco, I mean...
No, you said Orco. You're an Orco guy now. Mine's Merman. You can see him. He's right there.
Yeah.
He's my, he's always been my favorite. He's one of my favorite toys ever. I just love Merman. How about G.I. Joe?
G.I. Joe is definitely Destro.
Yeah.
I'm always a Destro fan. I love him. I love the look of the figures. Now, kind of similar to He-Man for you, I got into the figures before I saw the cartoon, which...
So with Destro, where you would have been late to the game with G.I. Joe as well, because they launched in 82.
Yeah.
Did you have the original Destro with the silver head? Did you get the gold-headed, like, Iron Grenadier version of Destro? Or what Destro did you get when you were a kid?
I had the gold one. I preferred the silver... Like, looking back at it, I would have preferred the silver one, but I did have the gold head. Also, Cobra Commander.
Yeah.
Big G.I. Joe for me. As far as, like, the good guys go... It's a toss-up between Duke and Flint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another brand that's so tough for me to choose because I love them all. But if I had to pick one character from the whole thing, Zarana is my favorite.
Okay. Yeah.
But if I was going to say Joe Cobra, so if Zarana is my Cobra, it's tough with Joe because like I don't think this guy is necessarily my favorite now. But when I was a kid, Shockwave, who is the SWAT guy, were all blue. Because he came out late, so I had already been playing with G.I. Joe for years when I got Shockwave. But when I got him, I made him like the biggest badass of like my team. Yeah. He would like flip his tanks over, like it's ridiculous. But I just made him like super tough, and so he kind of became like my main G.I. Joe. So he's sort of I guess I would kind of call him my favorite. But I have so many favorites. But yeah, all right, Transformers.
Ooh, Autobots. I don't want to be that guy that says Optimus Prime. So if I was to pick an Autobot, oh, that's a tough one. I would probably go toward Blur.
Blur, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. There was something about Blur, and maybe even Jazz.
Okay. What about Decepticon?
Decepticon is hands down Starscream.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Starscream. Maybe a close second would probably be Thundercracker.
Okay.
I just like the Jets.
You don't stray too far.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Decepticon, my choice might be Thrust, who's one of the Jets as well. But that's more because, like, I don't remember Thrust doing anything in the cartoon in particular. Like, I don't know what his voice sounded like or anything. But I liked the Jets. I preferred the cone-headed Jets.
Cyclonus.
Well, he was
in the movie first, wasn't he?
Well, Cyclonus he came late. He's like later. He was at the movie introduced, and he wasn't really a seeker jet anymore.
Right.
He was, but yeah, it was the Coneheads were Ramjet, Dirge, and Thrust.
Yes.
And so Thrust was the black and maroon one, and that's the only seeker jet I had as a kid. I didn't have Starscream or anything, so Thrust, it was a cool figure, and so that's I think just because I had it, and as a kid he was actually one of the bigger Decepticons I had, because a lot of the Transformers I had were like combiners or the mini bots. So even a mid-sized one like Thrust or Jazz or somebody, they felt like more important in my collection because they were larger than a lot of the other guys in my team. So Thrust might be my Decepticon, although I also love Shockwave and Soundwave. Those guys are both.
Soundwave, yeah, I love Soundwave.
And then for Autobots, I always like Gears. Again, this is more based on the toy. He was a little teeny little guy, but I loved him. Got him up there above my door, like that's the repro in package. I love that little toy. But in all the years since playing with him as a kid, I've read a lot of Transformer comic books, and the comic books have kind of really developed some other characters that I've really grown a fondness for. But Gears, I always used to say was my favorite, so he's definitely still up there. All right, well, Star Wars.
Oh boy. My favorite Star Wars character is Admiral Akbar. It's kind of like you with Walrus Man. Like, he's not really a significant character in Star Wars.
He's definitely more significant.
He's more significant than,
And I love Akbar as well. He was probably my favorite good guy.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know, it's something about, like, I love fish guys. Like, not as much as that chick in The Shape of Water. But I like fish guys, like, as friends. And so Walrus Man, as he kind of told you, I've got my big giant replica, pointing weird, but like, up there, that's a reproduction of the original Kenner Star Wars figure blown up to 12 inches. So I had the little 3 3/4 inch one when I was a kid, and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite toys of all time. Even though it's not screen accurate at all, I just love that Walrus Man toy. He's my favorite Star Wars character. I won't even necessarily say you'd say, well, he's my favorite bad guy. Akbar is my favorite good guy. Because is he even really a bad guy? Like, he's kind of just like a side character. He didn't speak English. He just had a couple of grunts on screen, and then he was good. Well, I guess he didn't get killed, did he? Yeah, his arm got cut off, and then they killed him. But yeah, I loved Akbar as well, and I was kind of sad that they brought him back only to kind of unceremoniously kill him.
He wasn't done any justice at all. And, I mean, it is what it is at that point. As far as bad guys go in Star Wars, I think that's a toss-up. I really, really love Darth Maul.
Okay. Yeah, he's awesome.
And even some of the villains in the newer Star Wars TV shows, like Reva,
Yeah.
Just kind of
and we won't spoil anything, but I was going to ask you, so you watched Kenobi.
Yes.
Have you watched all 3 episodes so far? And I don't know why, but like when I first heard they were going to do a Kenobi, either a movie at first and then there was a show, and I knew they'd already brought Darth Maul back in the Clone Wars cartoon. I kind of hoped that Maul would be in it and you'd get a chance to see Obi-Wan and Maul. I didn't expect them to go Vader. And like I'm happy about it. I think it's cool and maybe it makes more sense. Because I know that apparently in the cartoon he already had his closure with Maul. I didn't watch much of the cartoon, so I didn't see that. But
the spoiler-free version, I would have not done what they did in episode 3. I probably would have saved that for maybe the final episode, just to keep building up the suspense.
Yeah, well, I kind of get why they maybe... Anyway, it's hard to talk about if we don't want to spoil it. But anyway.
Maybe more soon.
Yeah.
Darth Maul, and I think I'm a classic, like, Stormtrooper dude.
Yeah, Stormtroopers are cool. Right across from us, I've got my little army of Stormtroopers. Yeah, I got a whole bunch of them. All right, is there any... Those are the brands that come to mind. Was there anything else? I feel like we got to know you a little bit more.
Yeah. I don't think there is anything else. Maybe...
Okay.
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Now, I'm gonna stop this again. Just a few episodes ago, I shot a half-hour episode, and I lost it all. I don't want that to happen again, because it'd be really lame to have this conversation again and pretend we didn't already have it. So I'm going to stop this and save this, and then we're going to be right back. Maybe we should talk about toys.
Yeah.
This is a toy show.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so first thing, I've got this bad boy. So, yeah, we can get your receipt there, too, for any reason. But, so this is Martian Manhunter, and that is for you.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I've seen that guy a few times now since. I don't know if you
Really?
know.
It's so frustrating, because they only release them in limited numbers in Canada, I find, when they're American exclusives. And now EB Games, or former GameStop, is out of business here. So, like we were talking about on the last episode, it's like a 25-minute drive out to the...
And that's where I went for that guy. Yeah.
That was, what, about a month ago now?
Yeah, it was shortly after we shot that last episode, which was about 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was in GameStop, and I saw him, and I think I called you from there and just say, like, they've got the new wave. So it wasn't just Martian Manhunter, but they had Lex and
General Zod
and all those guys.
Clayface.
So I called you, but you didn't answer, so I was like, well, I'm not going to just, like, buy him if I don't know. Even though I kind of want him for myself. I really do like that figure. And the thing is, like, it is really great, but I do have a really solid Martian Manhunter of my own.
Yeah, I do like him.
So this is my Martian Manhunter, and this is like the Ed McGuinness based on his artwork, and I love this figure. So this is the kind of figure where I feel like I'm just noticing he looks like Dave Bautista painted green. He kind of looks like Drax. But I've had this figure since before I think he was ever even cast in that movie. But I've had this for a long time. I love it. It's the kind of figure that I think I don't need this character ever again, because this is exactly the kind of aesthetic I like. Yeah. But that is a great figure. And I'm scared to death of this one now breaking, because I have a really cool, you see Hawkman over there too? Same style. I buy these figures, I take them out of the package, I set them on and that's it. One day I was like dusting, I picked up my Hawkman, and his arm just snapped out. There's like a little clear like peg that holding his arm on. I was like, is that what these guys are put together with? And so now his arm's stuck on there with like sticky tack and stuff. So now I'm thinking these guys are really fragile, and I'm kind of scared to ever pose them or do anything with them. So maybe I'll get that guy eventually. It is cool. But yeah, so I didn't get him that day, but then I got a hold of you later. Yeah. And I happened to be back in the store again. Picked him up, thinking that you would come by the next day and get him or something. Yeah. But I've been sitting on him for 3 weeks now, so.
Yeah, I've been busy with school and work and stuff.
Understandable. Yeah. So yeah, there's that. So yeah, now I'll talk about some of the new stuff.
Absolutely, let's do it.
So like I said, this is kind of a mixed bag here. Maybe the first thing I'll start with is I do have Masters of the Universe figures that I'm going to do a full video on later. But I've been doing my Origins figures in waves. So there's a new wave of Origins figures, so I have the 4 figures. I'm going to do a video specific on them. And I thought about tacking this guy on the end, but then I thought, well, whatever, I'll stick him in my mishmash video. So this is Merman, my all-time favorite Masters of the Universe character. But this is him from the new the Revelation show.
Yeah.
So I like this figure. And one thing that I like about him is that he looks different from other mermen. Like, see, this is the classic version. And this is pretty much the perfect merman figure. This is what merman should look like. And some of the Revelation figures, they're veering pretty far from the standard. And then some of them, like Stinkor, who's, I don't know if you can see them, but I got my two Stinkors side by side right up there. And they're almost identical. Like, they didn't change him very much at all. And to be honest, like, if they had done the same with Merman, I would have had to buy it. But at the same time, it feels a little redundant. I'm like, okay, it's going to look the same as this guy. He might have a little bit different posability, maybe some different accessories, but he's kind of the same. So I'm kind of glad with this guy they changed him up. Like, he's got the same basic aesthetics and that his colors are the same, but he's got his trident, but it's a different trident. He's missing an eye and he's all scarred up because this cartoon was supposed to take place, several years in the future. And so, yeah, apparently time's been rough on old Merman.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
Did you like the new cartoon?
I did. Like, it wasn't... that was another thing. People were freaking out about that online.
Sorry, it was the shadow.
Yeah. Like, I read so much hate about that cartoon. It's like, calm down, people. Like, it's maybe not what I would have done, because you've probably seen it by now. It's been out for months. But yeah, He-Man, they basically kill He-Man off and he's barely in the show. And they focus on Teela, and Teela kind of goes on an adventure, and she finds some old bad guys, some old good guys, and she kind of puts this ragtag team together. And it's not what people were expecting because they wanted He-Man. To be honest, He-Man was probably one of my least favorite characters in the old thing anyway. I liked the monsters and the robots, so I didn't really miss him all that much. And yeah, I kind of wish they had done more with Merman, but even his little cameo was cool. And so yeah, I like this look for him. It's different. And like I did on the last episode we did together, I might maybe, cut away and do a little close-up review just so everybody gets a really close look at him. But yeah, I think it's a cool figure. But I will say, Merman has been on my best of list, I think, the last 3 years. Yeah. Because like the Origins figure came out last year, and then the year before that there was a different version of an Origins figure, and there was also, I got that 12-inch one, so he was on my list twice that year. I got this figure, and I don't think he's a top 10 guy. Like, it's cool, and it's Merman, but I think I am a little bit Mermaned out. Like, he needed to really wow me, and I think he's fine. Who knows? Maybe I'll change my mind about him before we get to the end of the year. But I think he's cool, but he just doesn't wow me. Any thoughts?
I like the little subtle differences that you already mentioned, like missing the eye.
And the scars on his chest.
Yeah, the scars. I mean, for me, I can kind of see how you would get tired of him based on like all the versions that have been created. But
yeah,
I'm impartial to it because I kind of missed the boat on He-Man. Like, it was later. It was earlier than my time. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. So that's Merman. Maybe here I will cut in a little 2 or 3 minute closer look at him. So here is a closer look at Merman outside of the box. And probably right off the bat, my first impression on this guy is that he's a little bit leaner than we're used to seeing. Not just for Merman, but for any Masters of the Universe character. Most Masters of the Universe characters are all built on the same body, and it's this big, beefy, muscular body. So it didn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense that the fish guy would be just as ripped as the ape guy and the barbarian. But that's just the way they all looked in the classic toy line, at least. So I kind of like that this is a little bit more of a distinct look. It kind of separates Merman from the other members of Skeletor's evil warriors. So yeah, it's a really cool design. Like, the head sculpt is nice. It almost looks like his jaw would be articulated, but it is not. And so there you see his eye. He's got a big kind of scar across there where he's lost an eye. He's also got these scars and scrapes all over his body. On his arms as well, even on his back. Now that's kind of an interesting sculpted piece. Like, it almost looks like he has some sort of armor built into his skin there, which I think is kind of a unique thing for this figure. Yeah, so pretty cool. Like, the armor is not super detailed or intricate or anything, but it is nice that you have multiple, paint apps on there to help kind of break it up. So he's got a few different colors at play here, which is nice. He's got a variation of his kind of trident that he's had for the last number of years. His sword is pretty different, though. Merman almost always has this weird, I don't know. The sword, sometimes it looks like, it used to look like it was a cob of corn, but I think it was supposed to be seaweed or coral, or I think it might have even supposed to have been like the fin off of a swordfish or something. But this here is clearly none of those things. It's just a straightforward sword. So I'm not sure if there's a story behind that about why Merman lost his classic corn sword, but anyway. So there you go. It's a cool figure. Again, articulation, I'm not going to go over it, but it's the same for all the Revelation figures, essentially. He's got the double-jointed elbows there. So you can see should be able to pretty much touch his shoulder. Although it's a little finicky and I don't want to force it. Let's see on this arm. Yeah, I really don't want to force the issue, but he should be able to bend those. Same as his knees. He's got the double joints, so his legs should be able to go pretty far back. And besides all that, you can see all his other joints here. He's got a good range of movement. It's a nice figure. If you have any of the Revelation figures, you kind of know what to expect at this point. Now, just for a little bit of a comparison. Now, before I bring in the other Merman, I mentioned Stinkor a second ago. So here is the Masters of the Universe Classic Stinkor from about 10 years ago or so. And these Classics figures are, I think, kind of the best representation of these characters. They're not stylized. They are based on the vintage toys, and they just represent them with better proportions, better articulation, better gear. They're just cool figures. So I absolutely love this Stinkor. I think it's perfect. Now, a lot of the Revelation figures are very similar to their original one. So here is the Revelation Stinkor. And you can see that these guys are very, very similar. They haven't changed up the design of Stinkor much at all. You can kind of get his mouth there behind the gas mask. And, he looks very much like the other Stinkor. And I think that's great for fans that want this toy, but these are really hard to get. The Classics figures, they haven't been produced for a number of years. They were always kind of expensive because it was geared towards collectors. So yeah, I feel bad for all the new Masters of the Universe fans that want these and couldn't get them. So I think this is a really nice that you can get figures that are pretty much just as good. Some might even say these are superior because of the increased articulation, but I do like the very classic look of the classic figures. So anyway, now that you've seen how similar the two Stinkors are, let's look at how different the Mermans are. So again, here is the, there's the classic Merman. So he is not exactly based on the vintage figure, because here is the vintage figure from the 80s, and you can see how different his head design is. So Merman had a couple of different looks. This was the look of the toy. On the back of the packaging, he looked like that. And then in the cartoon, he looked different again. So he had kind of three unique looks. So what's cool about the Classics figure is it actually came with two heads. You could display him like this as he appeared on the packaging, or he had a replica of this head so you could make him look like the vintage toy. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, some other Merman I have here. So from the recent Origins line, so here's Merman. So this is very closely based on the vintage figure. He's got that same head design. And then also from Origins, we've got this Merman, which is based on the packaging look closer to the Classics figure here. Now also part of the Classics line, there was a subset called Club Filmation, which was based on the Masters of the Universe cartoon. So here is Merman as he appeared in the cartoon. So we've got lots of different looks for Merman happening here. And I think you would probably say this guy is maybe the most unique of all of them. Perhaps just because he doesn't have the armor, which really kind of separates him. But his head design is pretty different too. But out of all these Mermen, I think the figure that he kind of most closely resembles is the figure from 2002 when they did a reboot of Masters of the Universe. And you'll notice with this guy, so he is very lean. He's still muscular, but he's much leaner than, say, Beastman and He-Man in this line. Also, I'm noticing that he does have those kind of scaled pieces on his back, like I was noticing on the new one. And also, you notice his skirt piece, instead of like a little orange loincloth like we see on most of the other mermen, he's got this kind of dangly, ripped looking loincloth, which is closer to what we're seeing here. So if anything, I would say based on like the loincloth there, based on the armor, I would think the designers of this merman were heavily influenced by the 2002 design. And it's a really solid figure. As I mentioned, I may be a little mermaned out because I have so many mermen. And even though I think this one's cool, I still prefer the classic look, so I don't necessarily see this as an improvement or anything. But I am glad it's different and that I didn't just end up buying another pretty much identical merman. I like that this guy kind of stands on his own. Okay, so next up. Here, I'll go to a weird one.
Sure. I love weird things.
And this is one where I realize like I have no willpower whatsoever. Like I think I do because I have all these toys, and whenever anybody says you have a lot of toys, I'm like, yeah, well you have no idea how many toys I want that I don't buy.
Yes, that's my rationale too.
So I think I do have some willpower, but I was going through I was having one of those like little financial crises the other day where I was like, oh my god, my visa's out of control. I'm like, I just had my credit card limit increased, and right away I'm like, it just started popping up like they just gave me free money, and I was like, no, that was not the purpose here. I was trying to get my credit card paid off.
Yeah.
And so I was like, stop buying useless things. Like I go into the comic book store every single week, and I usually have a stack of comic books that's going to cost me like $50 or something. But every now and again I go in and they're like, oh, there's only 2 comic books here for you. So it's like a, $9 a week or something. And I'm like, well, that doesn't feel like enough. Even though I've got a stack of unread stuff on my nightstand, I could just go home and read.
It's never enough.
But like to go in and only get like 2 comic books, they feel so I go start pulling things off the shelf and I spend money and I'm like, I'm like, you don't have this money. It's your credit card. Stop it. So I was in one of those little phases where I'm like, I need to stop buying useless shit. But I went to Walmart and I always go to the toy department first. Even if I'm just going for bread, I'm like, I gotta go check toys first. And I went to the toys. There was no G.I. Joe, Transformers, anything like that. But I bought this. Now this is Emperor Zerg and his cycloptic little drone.
Definitely not something I think you would have bought.
Yeah, and so this is from the upcoming Lightyear movie, which I'm not really even that excited to see. I'm not going to go to theaters. Is it even in theaters or is Disney Plus? I don't know.
I think it's just Disney Plus.
But the thing is, I loved the Toy Story movies. I all 4 of them are great, but the first... Is there 4 or 5? 4.
There's 4, yeah.
And I was going to say the first 2, but honestly the first 3. And I've only seen the 4th one once, so it hasn't really made attached to me so much. And I thought I was impressed with how much the 4th one still worked. Like, yes. I was like, oh, there's still story to tell here. But by the end of the 3rd one, I felt like, wow, they took these characters and gave them such a complete arc that I thought, like, they really shouldn't revisit this because they've said everything they need to say, and anything more is going to be a cash grab. So I was a little worried when 4 came out. I still liked 4, but it hasn't worked its way into my heart the same way the first 3 have. And I never really felt like I needed toys of, like I didn't run out and go buy Mr. Potato Head or anything. Yeah. But I love the idea of the toys being alive, and I love the second one, how they leaned into the collector market with that guy, buying the Woody and redoing them and stuff. And I love that opening bit of Toy Story 2 where you see Buzz Lightyear in action, going after Zerg, but then you realize it's just a video game that Rex is playing, and then later in the toy store they encounter a toy of Zerg. And so I've had the only Toy Story toy I have in my collection. I bought this back when Toy Story 2 came out. So this is a Zerg. He's got his big cannon. I just, obviously he's a spoof of, Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And I just think he's awesome. And I think he still talks.
I have been assembled to conquer this planet. Bow to Zerg.
I guess I should let everybody see him, but...
Now you have given me total power.
Anyway, love this thing. He's a little worse for it. And this toy is probably 20 years old.
Oh, easily.
He's getting close to 20 years old now. So I love this guy. And so I don't know a whole lot about this Lightyear movie. But I like the fact that, Buzz Lightyear doesn't look like the toy, because my understanding is this is supposed to be the real Buzz Lightyear that the toy would have been like based on. And so it makes sense that the real Zerg doesn't look exactly like the toy of Zerg. So I guess in the movie, Zerg is going to have look more like this with the full body and the, instead of having that kind of skirt piece. And do you remember these guys too?
Yes.
So yeah, there was that scene in the movie where Rex is playing a video game, and then this little drone pops up to the ground, and then like thousands of them all pop out, and they have that little laser, and they all blow each other up. Anyway, he kind of looks like a Mandroid from the Marvel Universe too.
That's what I was thinking.
So I saw Buzz Lightyear toys were coming out, and I didn't think anything of it. But I was in the toy store the other day, and I saw they had like Zerg figures that were like 12 inches tall, but they were big, hollow, kind of like cheap. And I was like, I kind of like the look of that Zerg. I'm like, I have a Zerg. I'm like, but I really don't. What am I going to do with this 12-inch Zerg? And I was hoping maybe they had a cool 6-inch one, because they had a 6-inch line, but it was like 4 different versions of Buzz, and there's no Zerg on the back of the package or anything. So I'm like, I don't know. And then I saw this little one, and I do like these Imaginext figures. Yeah. And so yeah, it was only $10, and I got Zerg, and the fact that I got the little drone guy as a bonus. I don't really know where I'm going to put them. It's kind of sad to know I'm probably going to open these, and they might end up immediately in my miscellaneous toy bin, where I might never see them for, ever again, essentially. So this is exactly what I shouldn't be spending my money on, even though it was only $10. I couldn't resist. At least I didn't buy the bigger version. That's, again, my rationale.
It's solid. It's solid rationale.
Yeah, so I'll do a close-up of them now. So here is a closer look at Emperor Zerg. And I just noticed on the packaging that this guy's name is Cyclops. So, pretty cool. Another thing I noticed about this guy in the packaging was that he had this weird peg on his arm, which I thought looked kind of stupid. But then I realized when I was opening it, there's a shield in there that attaches on there. So I'm glad that there's a justification for that. And now it's not poking out of the side of him very obviously. So that looks better. So yeah, these are neat little figures. Imaginext, they make all kinds of figures. They've got some DC figures, and they make some really cute, like Batman stuff with a little bat cave and everything. They're just fun. And $10 for 2 figures isn't bad. And you can see, as far as the articulation goes, a good range of movement on the arms. The legs, I'm noticing they appear to be almost like one piece. So like when you move one up, they both go up. So that's kind of weird. They can't really kick or anything. But I guess that's the extent of the articulation on him. He's got some peg holes on his feet, so you can stick them on. It seems like there's a bunch of vehicles and stuff available in this line. So anyway, he's neat. I like the way he looks. But the real draw for me was Zerg. I would not have bought the Cyclops on its own. And this is a cool looking Zerg, although I don't like it better than the old design. I prefer the skirted design from Toy Story 2. I think this is kind of cool, but his head looks a little small on this body, I find. It's a little strange looking. But it might just be because it doesn't really work in this scale, like this small of a figure. But I do like the design enough that if I do eventually see like a 6-inch version of this guy, and he looks a little better at that size, I might still pick it up. Because I just love that face design on Zerg. It reminds me of Death's Head. Just that shape of the mouth and everything. So you take Death's Head, you mix him with Darth Vader, you color him purple, and how can you go wrong? So articulation is pretty much the same as Cyclops. He's got a good range of movement on those joints, but the legs are stuck together. So even though they're separate pieces, they're connected inside there. And then the head. So he's got some head articulation, where Cyclops did not really have a head. But anyway, he's fun. I couldn't really help myself. I don't know what I'm going to do with these guys. I don't really have anywhere to display them. Although they're small enough that you can kind of just stick them anywhere. But yeah, there you go. So that's Zerg and Cyclops. Okay. So this next one, who will we talk about? Actually, I'll start with this one. And I might have talked about this on the show before, but I don't think so. I keep a pile of stuff on my floor that I either have to put on Instagram, which if you don't follow me on Instagram, it's Mike's Collection Halifax. You want to follow him too?
At Booster82.
Now you'll have to start posting some cool stuff on there.
I try.
So I have a pile for things that need to go on Instagram, things I need to do on YouTube, because I have to get through both piles before I can finally put them away in my collection. And this guy, I Instagrammed him, but I don't know if I ever YouTubed him because he was kind of like floating around loose. I've had him for months, so I'm just going to squeeze him into this episode. So this, have you seen this before?
Yeah.
So this is a sort of like a G.I. Joe figure. You see at the top, it's got the G.I. Joe font, but it says Larry Hama. And this is made by a company called Fresh Monkey Fiction. And he looks exactly, like quality-wise, like the 3 3/4 or the 4-inch G.I. Joes that were being made just a couple of years ago. So he will fit in flawlessly with the collection if I decide to open them, but I don't know if I will. I might just pin this card.
What's unique, right?
Yeah, so this was like a small little company, and they did this figure as a Kickstarter. And I considered backing it then, but it was, again, I think I was going through one of my little financial crises, and I was like, I don't know if I should buy that, and I didn't. And then I kind of regretted it later, but it took them like 2 years before they finally delivered. And there was a time when I would see people online like, is this company still even happening, or should I get a refund? Like, there was some worry about if this was ever going to see the light of day. And then when it finally came out, then they said we're going to do a repop and like people can have another go at it. And it went up on Big Bad Toy Store, so I pre-ordered it from them. Felt a little safer.
Yep.
And so yeah, this is like the second go. I don't think it's any different. I don't know if they changed anything about the second run of them. But just if you don't know who this dude is, this is he worked for Marvel, and he's the guy that wrote pretty much every issue. I think every issue but one of the G.I. Joe comic book for Marvel in the 80s. He wrote all of the file cards that were on the back. I don't know if he did for the whole line, but at least for the first several years, he would have wrote all the file cards, so he really fleshed out the characters. So even though he didn't have anything to do with the cartoon, a lot of people feel like the comic book is like the real canon.
Right.
Because like we talked about with He-Man, the cartoon was silly, and the bad guys were fools. The comic book didn't treat them that way. The comic book was like, he had a military background, and he used a lot of his military lingo. That people died, in the comic book.
Yeah.
It was way better. The cartoon was fun, but it's depending on what you're looking for. The comic book is a lot more intense. Larry Hama is held in very high regard for anybody that's a G.I. Joe fan. I got to meet him a couple of years ago. I'm not really a convention guy. I would never travel to go to San Diego or something, but we have a little thing here in Halifax called HalCon. We usually get a lot of low-level guys, like this guy was a third-tier character on Buffy or something. But we got Larry Hama to come. He did I got him to draw me a sketch of Zarana, which I'll have to add in here so you can see I still into it. But anyway, so this guy is kind of like the creator of G.I. Joe. Not really, but in certain senses, he is. And I think it's really cool that they kind of added him into the G.I. Joe collection. And yeah. If I don't open him, it's kind of a shame because I can't put his little hat. He's got a hat with the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier on there, the USS flag. So yeah, even if I do a cutaway of this, I'll just do some close-ups of, you'll see the packaging, because I don't think I'm going to open this guy up. I open up most of my toys, but every now and again I will keep the odd thing sealed.
Yep. No, that's the eternal struggle for a collector, is deciding, are you going to collect in box or out of box? And even myself, I'm an out of box collector, but there are just a minimal things that I will keep in the box.
So here is the Larry Hama figure. You get a little bit of a closer look at him here. Although, at least at this point, I am not going to open him up. But, it's a really nice figure. Maybe when I open this guy up, I'll realize that he's made of a cheaper quality plastic or something. But at a glance, he looks like he is on par with, any modern G.I. Joe figure. As far as the articulation goes. When you look at his knees, the double-jointed knees there, and the swivels, and getting a lot of glare from my lights here, but yeah, it's a nice looking figure. The artwork's really nice. That almost looks like a photograph, so it looks like it probably originally was, and then maybe touched up a little bit. But yeah, the card's nice. It's a nice quality. It feels nice and thick. It's even thicker than what Hasbro uses on their G.I. Joe cards most of the time. So yeah, I really like the packaging here. He's listed as Larry Hama creator. He's got his own unique file card that really goes into his real history about being a comic book creator. They didn't make up some fictionalized file card for him. You get the same image on the back. And just as a comparison, next to a modern Joe, you'll see here he is next to a Duke. And so if I did open him up, he would display nicely with these guys. And for accessories, you see he's got some extra hands and a hat. And yeah, pretty cool stuff. I like him. Now, you might have seen me post this dude on Instagram, but this is the Phantom. And again, I'll have to wait till I do a cutaway so you can really get a good look at him. But you're familiar with the Phantom? So what was your introduction to him? Billy Zane? Or later, when did you...
No, I would say it's Billy Zane.
Yeah, and for that, I feel a little bit like a Phantom poser because, like, I love the Phantom. I buy anytime there's a Phantom comic book that comes out now, and there's a few different companies that publish him because I think he's maybe in like the public domain or something. So there's other,
I think he is.
So there's a couple companies that do comics of him. Unfortunately, they're often not like the most quality stuff. So I've got some bad Phantom comic books. I would definitely buy an ongoing line from him if they did it. But this guy's been around since, I don't know, the 30s, 40s maybe. He's like an old pulp style superhero. I think he's credited with being the first superhero in tights, like even predating Superman, like the full onesie. And but I wasn't familiar with this guy until, well, the Billy Zane movie kind of really made me a fan of him. I do remember there was a cartoon in the 80s called Defenders of the Earth.
Yes. And
it was a bunch of old-timey heroes kind of lumped together. So you had Mandrake the Magician and Flash Gordon and the Phantom. They kind of put them all together as like this team. And I remember that show being on, but I didn't really register because it was like a cartoon that was like so low level to me compared to G.I. Joe, He-Man, Transformers. It just wasn't really on my radar. But yeah, when the Billy Zane movie came out in the 90s, and it's a bad movie.
Yeah, it wasn't good at all.
Like I enjoy it, but I did actually rewatch it, I think, last year, and I was like, yeah, this is it's a tough watch. But anyway, that is the movie that turned me on to the Phantom. And so yeah, I've wanted cool Phantom figures ever since the 90s, and they're hard to come by. So anyway, this is from Boss Fight Studio. Are you familiar with them at all? Or?
No.
So Boss Fight, they were, and I might get some of this wrong, but basically I think they were a group of toy sculptors that, other companies would hire. So they sculpted a lot of those G.I. Joes in my collection stuff that Hasbro would hire Boss Fight to do the sculpting. And I think they might have done some DC or whatever. Like, they've done figures in my collection. I don't even really know what, because, they don't really credit the sculptor on toy packaging generally. But then they went off and they started their own company called Boss Fight Studios, where they were going to produce their own original line of toys. They started off doing a Kickstarter called Vitruvian Hacks, which you guys can't see them, but Chad can. Those two floating shelves up there. They've got all those like Spartans and skeletons and all that stuff. So they did this line of kind of like Greek mythology stuff. They had Medusas and all these Spartan warriors. Anyway, I loved them, and I bought all of them. I went all in on the Kickstarter. It cost me hundreds of dollars. And I thought they were going to keep going deep with that stuff. But they called that kind of Wave 1, and then Wave 2, they switched to fantasy with like orcs and trolls and knights. And I was kind of like, it's not really my scene. So I haven't bought anything since that initial like launch. And I kind of keep hoping they'll revisit those, but they're really focusing. I think probably the orcs and shit are selling better for them, so that's what they're doing, but it doesn't really interest me. Anyway, a spin-off from their Vitruvian Hacks line, they called this line Hero Hacks, and I got Zorro last year. So they did a little Zorro like this, and they also did Zorro with a horse.
Okay.
I bought both of them. They've got more Zorros coming out. But anyway, now they're doing Flash Gordon and Phantom as well. So I had 3 Phantoms on pre-order. Take a look at them here. So there's this Phantom, which is version 1. Then there's Phantom in his gray outfit, which is like version 3. And version 2 is him in a different shade of purple, and he comes with his horse. And after I got this figure, I canceled my pre-orders of the other 2. And I might still order them again, but I wanted time to take this figure in and be like, do I need 2 more versions of him?
Right.
Because Phantom has worn other color onesies, especially if you look at some of the international comic books and stuff. He's appeared in green and gray and black and blue and stuff. So I would buy all the different variations of him. But I am just kind of getting away from the 3 3/4 inch collecting. Like now that G.I. Joe is 6 inches, and like I think he's cool, and I have one. But like last year, NECA put out this figure, which is like a 6-inch, really detailed Phantom, and this is him in his Defenders of the Earth look, which is a solid purple. And you notice that guy's got like striped shorts on over his, so kind of like Superman style. He's got like underwear on the outside. And so they've actually repainted this figure to give me that same look, darker purple, striped shorts. And I'm kind of thinking of buying that one too. And I'm like, well, am I really going to be buying Phantom in 2 different scales? I think this is clearly the superior figure, even though I love what those guys do. But I kind of think like, you know what, I've got the one, and maybe that's enough of that scale.
Yeah, I guess it's just what would fit in with your collection more.
Well, like I'm going to put him next to my Zorro.
Yeah.
And like it's cool that I can display him next to my G.I. Joes or anything. Like he fits in perfectly with Joe's. But again, 6 inches is just kind of the way I'm going. And even though I like with a 6-inch, you probably wouldn't be able to pair him with a horse. Now, Phantom's always had a horse on a wolf like sidekick, so it's cool that they're making him with his horse. But it's going to be the same horse I have with Zorro, just painted white instead of black. And I'm not a horse guy. And I don't really care if he has his horse or not, to be honest with you. And I find Zorro's horse is it's really well made, but at the same time, he's almost too articulated. He's kind of hard to get standing still. I'm worried he's going to topple over because he's got too many joints in his leg and stuff. And I'm just like, you know what? These things aren't cheap. Like he's like $30 US, so he's probably easily $40 Canadian. You throw the horse in there, that set's like closer to like I think $60, and then probably $75, and I'm like, I don't need a horse that bad.
No.
So cool figure, but gonna hold off. So here is a closer look at the Phantom figure from Boss Fight Studios. And this is a great little figure. So you see he comes with a display base that says Hero H.A.C.S. And then you see underneath there, it gives you... So H.A.C.S is like a... If you see it... What's the word I'm looking for? Acronym? I don't know. But so Highly Articulated Character Kit System. That's what the H.A.C.S stand for in Vitruvian H.A.C.S and also in Hero H.A.C.S. So, and the bases are nice because you notice it's got multiple pegs. So there's like 4 pegs on there. So that way you don't have to stand him in exactly a super static pose. You can kind of spread his legs out or whatever and have him in a little bit more of a dynamic pose. So he also came with a couple extra sets of hands and a sword, which I think I accidentally put away before I shot the videos because I don't see them here. So anyway, he did have a sword if you prefer to display him that way, which you could because you see he's got 2 holsters. So his guns can be holstered here if you like. So if he had his guns holstered, then he could hold his sword. So it's a nice figure. I think this is probably the same basic body they've been using for a while on their like Vitruvian H.A.C.S figures, like those Spartan figures I showed you. And it works very well. Like it's really well articulated for such a little guy, and it's really well sculpted. Like it's all that definition in the muscle and everything. It looks great. So yeah, great range of motion. He's got double jointed knees there, so do his knees really far back. Do the splits. Yeah, great range of motion on the head. And the fact that these are called H.A.C.S, so they're character kit systems, they are meant to be very customizable. So you can pop this guy's head off, pop his arms out, and you can mix and match. So like I'm sure I have got some Spartans over there with like bare arms. So if I wanted to have Phantom with his bare arms exposed, I could pop these arms out and give him some of those ones. Make all kinds of little customs like that. So they're great for people that like 3 3/4 inch figures and customizing and building dioramas. These are definitely the way to go. I can't recommend Boss Fight Studio enough. If this is your preferred style of action figure, I think they're really great. Like even the detail on that face, like that face sculpt just really captures the Phantom. I think it looks awesome. And like I said, I'm so confident in these guys that I did pre-order 3 variations of this figure. I actually misspoke earlier in the video when I was describing the various figures. So the gray figure comes with the horse, and then there's another version of Phantom in a different shade of purple, more of a reddish purple, and that one is available single carded like this one was. So I pre-ordered all 3 of those figures, kind of sight unseen. I just knew they would be good figures based on the previous Vitruvian Hacks figures that I had. But as I mentioned a second ago, I really like this figure from NECA. Like, it's got great detail with the stubble on his face. He's very well articulated as well. And just the size of him, he scales up with all the other 6-inch lines like Marvel Legends and stuff, so you can display him, with Marvel Legends, with DC superheroes. The majority of my collection these days is 6-inch. And, I just don't know if it makes sense to buy 3 Phantoms at 3 3/4 inches when I'm already concerned about the amount of money I'm spending on these things. Like, the Phantom is cool, but how many Phantoms does one need, I wonder? Because, I really am thinking of getting the secondary version that NECA is going to be putting out. Like I said, the bigger one there, but more in this color outfit. And Boss Fight Studios actually just recently announced another line of figures that they're doing in this scale. So what you're seeing here, this is the old Defenders of the Earth Phantom figure from the 80s. So this is a vintage figure at this point, I guess, but they're doing a new line of figures in this style. So it's not an exact replica of this, but it's pretty cool too. And I'll be honest, I was kind of thinking of picking that one up as well. And yeah, I think I'm just kind of realizing that, maybe one Phantom in each format is maybe enough. So I don't know. Great figure. If you like 3 3/4 inch, definitely grab this guy. Just out of curiosity, so I think we did almost 20 minutes or so the first go around. Now we're at another half hour. We could go on. I don't know if people lose interest after too much talking, but
well, we did get like 125 plus views on the last one. So
we did. I don't know if that's because you're a shameless promotion, just all maybe your mom watched it a bunch of times. But what I was thinking we could do, if you want to.
Sure.
Maybe we wrap this up. I was kind of planning on getting all my miscellaneous done.
Mm-hmm.
But we could just put a cap on this and say this was 188. And then we just do 189, and I'll wait a few days just to give these poor people a break so they don't have to stare at us for 2 hours or something.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. So, thank you for watching. So, what did we cover? Yeah. Merman, Phantom, Zerg.
Different fandoms. Yeah.
Okay.
Some G.I. Joe stuff.
A little bit of whatever. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this episode because you're going to get more of the same on the next episode because it's going to be, we're going to shoot it in 2 minutes. So, anyway, stay tuned for that episode. Anything else? Anything you want to add?
Thanks for having me on again.
No problem. I'll have you on again very soon.
Absolutely.
All right. Until then. Ciao.
See you later.
Yeah, I was thinking after, because I know last time we did the chow together.
Yeah.
I don't even know why I started that. And do you watch The Office?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I just kind of got in the habit after one of my first sign. I don't know if I've been doing it since my first episode, but for a long time, for years, I've been doing chow. And then I rewatch The Office all the time.
Yeah, me too.
And remember that episode where they're making fun of Gabe? And the Kevin is like, oh, I'm fancy. I say chow. I say chow. Oh, and they're all like making fun of him for saying chow. Yeah. And then that's resonated with me ever since. I'm like, am I a dickhead doing that? I don't like what's with a salute and a chow? I don't know why I do it, but that's what I do. But I was thinking if you're going to be a regular co-host, we're going to have to be like Ron Burgundy and Veronica Corningstone, where we each need our own sign off. So you stay classy, world, and then you have to come up with something. All right, I'll think about something. I got about another hour. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for watching. Ciao. Adios. That works. Thanks. Yeah.